Alright, so Google just hosted their latest event and they dropped some really exciting AI announcements that we need to review together. In today's video, we'll jump right into the key details starting with their new voice-based AI called Gemini Live. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Gemini Live is Google's own custom voice assistant that you can have natural conversations with, built right on top of their Gemini language models. Now, I did get access to the early Gemini 1.5 Pro demo and did some thorough testing, but it really did not perform well at all. In fact, it was one of the buggiest and most limited AIs I've tried in a long time, which is pretty disappointing coming from Google. But they are promising a lot here in terms of capabilities for this new voice AI, so we need to break this down in detail. So without further ado, guys, this is the complete breakdown of Google's latest Made by Google event. Alright, so Google showed off a demo of Gemini Live in action, and I've got to say, right off the bat, the latency looked really good. It responded pretty quickly, which is actually the most important part of a natural conversation. They're offering 10 different voices to choose from, which is nice for personalization. But the thing is, and I noticed this right away, the voices don't sound quite as natural as what we saw in the GPT-4 with voice demos. They still have a bit of that robotic quality, and some of the intonations sound a little off. It's not bad, but it's not quite at that uncanny valley level of realism we've seen elsewhere. Now, the most important part is that Google is launching Gemini Live today. That's right, guys, Google is actually getting this out to users before OpenAI, which is a pretty big deal. Of course, you know I'm going to be testing it extensively, so I'll let you know what I think once I've had a chance to really put it through its paces. Quick side note here, who wants to bet it'll be jailbroken within a day? Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, one of the things that really caught my attention is how Google is integrating Gemini into their existing ecosystem. This is why I've always thought Google was well positioned to win in the AI race. They don't necessarily need to have the best model right now. What they have is the ecosystem and the hardware. Think about it. They've got Android, which is the most popular mobile operating system globally. Then they've got their suite of applications like Gmail, Google Docs, Google Calendar. I use almost all of these daily, and I bet many of you do too. By layering AI onto these existing apps, Google has a huge advantage. They already have our personal information, so we don't need to trust a new company with it. Here's where it gets really interesting. Imagine having an AI agent that could actually accomplish tasks on your behalf within these applications. That would cover pretty much everything in your digital life. This is the future I envision. An AI agent working for you 24/7. And realistically, it's going to be either Apple or Google that wins this race because they have both the hardware and the app ecosystem. Now, Google is also making a big push for on-device AI compute with Gemini Nano. This is something I'm really excited about and have talked about in previous videos. On-device compute means lower latency, lower cost, and your data doesn't have to leave your device. As small models continue to improve, we're going to see more and more use cases that can be handled right on your phone. Now, let's talk about some of the specific features Google showcased with Gemini. They demonstrated how it can work across their different apps. And honestly, it's pretty impressive. For example, they showed how you can ask Gemini to check your calendar and see if you're free for an event, all while looking at a concert poster through your camera. The demo actually had a few hiccups. Always fun to see live demo gremlins at work, right? But when it did work, it was pretty cool. Gemini was able to process the visual information from the poster, pull data from the user's calendar, and give a relevant response. That's a lot of context and integration happening behind the scenes. They also showed off some other features like setting reminders and adding items to shopping lists. Now, I've actually been using Gemini on Android for a few months now. I think a lot of people don't realize you can just flip a switch and replace OK Google with Gemini. And my experience has been, well, mixed. It's definitely nice to have something more capable than the old Google Assistant, but it's still not quite at the level of ChatGPT or Claude. And the worst part is that it sometimes loses functionality that the old assistant had. Like, I use voice commands to control my smart home, and with Gemini it fails about 1 in 5 times, saying it doesn't have access even though I know it does. This really highlights the current state of AI. It's impressive, but it still hallucinates, it still has bugs, and when you start to have these more complex use cases, the experience can break down. We're still in the early days, and there are going to be some rough edges. But hey, it's essentially day one. And I applaud Google for launching early and often. Now, there was also another major announcement at the event, and that was the new Pixel 9 series phones. And this is important because this is where Google is really showcasing their AI capabilities. The Pixel 9 is being marketed as the first phone designed for the Gemini era, and there's some pretty interesting hardware powering it. Google has developed a custom chip called Tensor G4, and they've actually worked hand in hand with Google DeepMind to optimize it for their latest advanced AI models. That's a big deal because you've got one of the top AI research teams in the world directly collaborating on the silicon for these phones. The Pixel 9 is launching with Gemini Nano, which Google claims is the most capable on-device AI model ever shipped on a phone. They say it's 3 times more capable and sophisticated than the Gemini Nano model they shipped just 9 months ago on the Pixel 8 Pro. That's some pretty rapid progress. Now here's a stat that caught my attention. The TPU in the Tensor G4 can generate an industry-leading mobile output rate of up to 45 tokens per second. That's impressive for on-device processing. But all these numbers and claims don't mean much if it doesn't perform well in real-world use. And of course, I'm going to be testing this extensively and I'll let you know how it actually holds up. So one of the features they showed off is a new Pixel Weather app that uses Gemini Nano to generate custom AI weather reports. Now, I've got to be honest, I'm not entirely sold on this one. They're saying it saves you from scrolling through a bunch of numbers, but is reading a paragraph of text really easier than glancing at a visual weather interface? It feels a bit like they're trying to shoehorn AI into everything, even where it might not be necessary. Alright, now after the Pixel 9 announcements, we're getting to some of the really cool stuff. Google is following in Apple's footsteps by introducing an on-device diffusion model for text-to-image generation. They're calling it Pixel Studio, and I've got to say, it looks pretty impressive. So Pixel Studio is powered by an on-device diffusion model running on the Tensor G4 chip, combined with their Imagen 3 text-to-image model in the cloud. What's cool about this is that it seems much more freeform than Apple's version. With Apple, you're limited to just a few style options, but this looks way more flexible. In the demo, they showed how you can create images with simple prompts like beach bonfire pit at sunset, and then easily modify them by adding elements like the Golden Gate Bridge or fireworks. The speed was really impressive. There was barely any waiting time between prompts. What I really liked was the ability to change styles on the fly. They demonstrated switching from a realistic style to cartoon and then to a retro video game look, all with just a tap. It's quick, it's easy, and honestly, it looks pretty fun to play around with. Another feature that Google introduced is called Add Me, which lets you add yourself or others to photos after they've been taken. Mark A. Brownlee actually made a video demoing this, and it works surprisingly well. They showed it off on stage with NBA star Jimmy Butler taking a photo and then seamlessly adding people who weren't originally in the shot. It's cool technology, no doubt, but it raises some interesting questions as AI continues to make photos better and different and add features to them. What is actual reality at that point? Are we even taking photos of real moments anymore? I've talked about this before, guys, and I think it's something we need to keep thinking about. As we move forward, more and more of the photos, videos, and audio we encounter are going to be either AI augmented or AI created. So what does that mean for our perception of reality? It's fascinating, but it's also a bit mind-bending when you really start to think about it. So what's my take on all of this? Look, Google's made some interesting announcements here, but I wouldn't call any of them revolutionary. They're incremental improvements, sure, but nothing that's going to completely change the game overnight. That said, I'm really excited about the direction they're heading with on-device AI. The fact that these large language models are making their way into our mobile devices is a big deal. It means faster responses, better privacy, and potentially new use cases we haven't even thought of yet. Now, I haven't had a chance to try out Apple's version of on-device AI yet, but you know I will as soon as I can get my hands on it. And of course, I'll be putting Gemini through its paces on my Android phone. I'm particularly interested to see how Gemini Live performs in real-world use. Will it be as fluid and natural as Google claims? We'll find out soon enough. One thing I want to emphasize is that we're still in the early days of AI assistance. There are going to be bugs, there are going to be limitations, and there are going to be times when these AIs do things that leave us scratching our heads. But that's okay. It's all part of the process. What's important is that companies like Google are pushing the boundaries and getting these technologies into our hands. The integration with Google's existing ecosystem is really where I think they have a chance to shine. If they can successfully layer AI capabilities onto the apps and services we already use every day, that could be a game changer. But the key word there is if. We'll have to see how well they execute on this vision. And that's all for this video, folks. If you've stuck around this long, I really appreciate that. If you liked the video, why not like and subscribe? It's sure to help the channel and motivate me to continue doing what I do. If on the other hand you didn't like the video, please let me know in the comments below so that I can improve my mistakes. As always, you've all been fantastic. Stay tuned for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and goodbye.